So hello everyone and welcome to the back garden yard. Well, we finally broke the drought and heat wave, and we ended up having like 3 or 4 rainy days in a row. We had highs as low in the upper 60s, believe it or not, right here in Georgia. And so we have now had some very interesting things happen in the back garden yard. Now, of course, this is still the bounty that we got from the calabash squash, and of course I got one Big Mac's pumpkin here. But what I want to show you today is what the cool weather brought. So if we go over here, there's the overflow on the calabash pumpkin. But I also have these logs here that I have inoculated for shiitake mushrooms, and I want you to look at the shiitake mushrooms that have popped out with this first cool weather. I guess you would call it of fall 2025, and I mean they came out just wonderful. Now, we inoculated these logs a year and a half ago, and we've only got very sporadic mushrooms, and I thought they weren't going to make. But this year, they have suddenly shown me. So let me get my scissors and we'll pick a few. So people ask me, well, how do you know these are really shiitake mushrooms and not some wild mushroom? And the answer is, you can tell because they've got the shiitake mushroom look on them. You can see that white and the white specks around it, and then on the bottom it's just creamy beautiful, just like this. And so that's definitely shiitakes. And of course shiitakes are what the spores that I planted. So when you know that you've planted shiitakes and you see shiitakes, I'm 100% sure these are all shiitake mushrooms. And so I've got them planted right here. Now, how do you plant these? Well, what you do is you drill a hole into the wood, and then you hammer in some you hammer in the spores, and where that happens is all the mycelium will grow, and then it takes a year or two, and then when you get the perfect weather like we just had, you'll end up getting a bunch of shiitake mushrooms. And that's exactly what has happened here. And I've got really, really nice harvests coming right here. And these are so delicious. Just look how pretty these are. So the way you cook these, in fact, I should probably do a cooking video on these. The way you cook these is you want to take them and cook them with spices. They're very meaty and everything, and butter, and then just saute them is usually the best way to cook them. You can throw them in soups. You can. It's not really good to eat them on salad, because what happens is when you eat them raw, you don't get the nutrients. That's a little known fact about mushrooms. If you want the nutrients, you need to cook them. All right, let's try these. Now people will ask me, okay, so now you've picked the mushrooms, are the logs done? The answer is absolutely not. The logs will continue producing for at least 2 to 3 more years until the bark gets so old that it starts falling off. And so what you want to do is take care of these logs, try to keep them try to keep the bottom of them from getting on the ground. If you notice, I've got them sitting on a pallet, and that keeps them off the ground, and therefore all the fungus and stuff that's in the ground won't grow up the logs as fast. They'll eventually get some other ones, but you'll be able to recognize these shiitakes by the characteristic color and white trim around the base, because they all have it. And then of course, once you know what they look like, you'll never have a problem identifying them. Now it's interesting that some of these they were planted in rows, and so some of them have popped out like these here in a row, and that's the way they come out. And then you go, well, didn't you plant some beside the rows? And the answer is yes, but you never know exactly when or why the mushrooms are going to pop out. When the mycelium that grows them gets just the right conditions, then they pop out what's called a flush of mushrooms. For about 10 logs, this is a massive harvest we're getting today. Let me show you what I've got so far. Check this out. Just a huge harvest, and I'm not finished. All right, let's go ahead and go back in there and get some more. So I believe I can show you on this log with a close-up. Right here is the spot where the wooden peg that had the mycelium was pegged into the log. Here's another one, and then here's another one, and then here's another one, and then here was a mushroom, and then here's another one, and then here's another one. Then if you look over here, here's where it made a mushroom. Right down here in line is the same thing, and down here's another one. So you can never predict where they are going to make the mushrooms. And then of course, as the mycelium grows, these holes here that haven't made mushrooms yet, probably later on are going to pop out, and then even these that made mushrooms can make more. So you just never know where the mushrooms will pop out. But we used several hundred plugs in these logs to get them to make the mycelium to make these mushrooms. Now let's take a look at the harvest today. And here you go. It's just a beautiful, beautiful harvest of shiitake mushrooms. Probably one of the prettiest ones I've ever had. These are just all so nice. And the bottom is so white and creamy. You just can't, you couldn't get them any fresher than this.